Do you expect Utah to bounce back tomorrow?
I mean, if I had to wager on it, I would say that the Mavs will come home Friday and start preparing for the second round. I don't think there's going to be a Game 7 in this series. I think the Mavericks have been the better team for months now. The fact they were up 2-1 without Luka would certainly, lend to that argument. And Luka seems to be getting a little better every game after being really good the first. Great last game. And I kind of anticipate a classic Luka performance for what would be the first closeout win of his career.
Tim, when you look at this series, is there something that you mentioned about the Mavs winning without Luka? Is that the thing that's been the most impressive to you about the way this series has gone?
Yeah, I mean, typically when one team doesn't have an MVP candidate, the other team is healthy, the other team is going to have that advantage. So the fact that Brunson absolutely dominated games 2 and 3, people. I haven't heard a lot of, hey, Luka doesn't have any help in this series.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
Brunson going for 41 and 31 quieted that for a little bit. And, Mark Cuban might need some help. He might need to take some donations to pay Brunson because that dude's earned a lot of money in this series.
Man, that was a great article the other day on Jalen Brunson and his dad Rick talking about the dynamics and everything. Do you get a good idea of what exactly the Mavs are looking at having to essentially match from the market?
Well, like I wrote, I have been asking other executives around the league, other personnel scouts around the league, like, hey, what do you think the market is for Brunson? And it's gone from 15 to 18 through much of the season. Now it's in that 20 to 25, and I'm talking per year range. And so I think the absolute floor for a Brunson contract at this point is 4 years, $80 million. And honestly, I anticipate that he's going to get more than that. Hindsight 2020, the Mavericks certainly should have signed him to that 4-year, $55.5 million extension when his folks let him know in January that he'd accept it. They put it on the table after the trade deadline, just like they did with Dorian Finney-Smith. And, the old saying, today's price ain't tomorrow's price. Well, January's price was not February 10th price.
Hey, Tim, we're in a situation right now where the Mavs, we've mentioned, we all know they're up 3-2. This time last year they were up 3-2. Is it, where do you feel like, though, the difference is? I mean, you mentioned you think it's going to be a closeout tomorrow night, but last year, did you feel the same way about this team, or is it completely a different feeling about what this team is at 3-2 as opposed to this year as of last year?
Yeah, hold on a second real quick.
All right.
Okay. I'm scanning the Jazz's roster. I don't see Kawhi Leonard on there. I might be mistaken, but I don't see a two-time Finals MVP that's capable of scoring 45 points and guarding Luka down the stretch.
Okay.
And I'm messing with you, but I
understand.
Yeah, dude, Kawhi Leonard 8 in this series, and Donovan Mitchell's had some huge playoff games. Rudy Gobert's an All-NBA player.
Well, then what have they done to Utah as far as with Utah with all their offensive efficiency and scores and stuff like that? I mean, they played great defense against Utah in this series. What is it about it? Why were they able to shut them down?
Well, and if you talk about the difference between this year's team and last year's team for the Mavericks, obviously defense is the number one thing, and we can talk about what the impact Jason Kidd and his defense coordinator Sean Sweeney's made, X's and O's psychologically and all that. But I'm going to give credit to two guys who are on the floor. Dorian Finney-Smith has made Donovan Mitchell's life very difficult in the series, and Donovan is the first one to tell you that. And then Reggie Bullock has quietly been a huge, huge addition for the Mavericks. He didn't shoot it well early in the season, so people were kind of grumbling and this and that. But he's the epitome of a 3-and-D guy, and his defense has been a big factor to the point where, if you've noticed, Mike Conley has kind of been played off the floor in these last few games because he's not effective offensively. Bullock's done a really good job on him. And by the way, if the Mavericks, I would assume Bullock's going to be the guy on Chris Paul. If they're good enough to run into a Ja Morant or a Steph Curry down the road, he'd be the guy, the primary defender on those guys. And then, the other thing is the Jazz's perimeter defense is just awful. And it has been exploited. throughout this series. It's been, it was exploited last year when they lost 4 straight to a Clippers team that had lost Kawhi Leonard by that point. Brunson has just torched them. They don't have anybody who can guard Luka. Not that there's a whole lot of those guys roaming the face of the earth. And so, I think it's as simple as that. The Mavericks defense has been really good, and the Jazz have been picked apart on the perimeter.
It's Tim MacMahon here with you on the Fan. We heard that today that the second round is going to start Monday, no matter what happens tomorrow. When do you think Devin Booker will be back? And based on what we're hearing about the hamstring right now, would the Mavs actually be favored if Booker's got to miss 3 or 4 games?
Yeah, I don't know when Booker will be back, and I don't believe a word that comes out of the Suns' mouth about it. Just like, when the Mavericks are acting like Luka, oh, well, we'll see about game 1. No, you won't. I mean, come on now. It's hilarious how 2 to 4 week injuries in the playoffs become day-to-day. I mean, hell, Kawhi Leonard, I think, was day-to-day in the playoffs last year, and he hadn't played since then. So, yeah. I would just be guessing. But my guess is that he's probably going to miss at least a game or 2 in that series, if not more than that. And I'm curious to see what Vegas does with that. I really don't know. The Suns are still really good, and the Mavericks were so good in crunch time for the second half of the season, but the Suns absolutely dominated that. Those minutes throughout the season. Chris Paul is the best closer, in the game closer. In the league. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, at this point, do not know who I will pick if we get that series, which, obviously I'm expecting to happen.
There's no way you pick Mavs with a fully healthy Suns team, do you?
No.
Okay.
But that's there's not a fully healthy Suns team. They're missing, their guy who I think is going to be a first-team All-NBA player this year. Luka's back. Luka's healthy. Luka's looked like himself. And Devin Booker is sitting out games right now and again. I don't know how many games he's going to miss, but I think he's going to miss some time in that series.
Tim, when you mentioned something about the Mavs, and we've all seen this with the clutch time, the crunch time, all those things that the finishing games, and the Mavs had so much problems with that. Where do you think that has come from? I mean, where now you used to just totally panic when we get to the last 4 or 5 minutes of a game and just worry that, okay, how the Mavs going to blow this? But where do you think that's kind of turned around for them?
Well, Dinwiddie for a while really was cooking in crunch time. And if you look at when the Mavs took off and became this dominant clutch team, it was right around the time that they made that trade. Now, he's actually struggled in the series, but I think there has been, number one, they're capable of getting stops. They've become a good defensive team. There has been just, this development of confidence that's happened with success in those situations. And then look, it's a lot easier to be a good team in the final few minutes of games when your superstar doesn't need an oxygen mask at that point. Mm-hmm. The fact that Luka has played his way into shape, I mean, he's a dude who's going to have the ball in his hands most of the time. If he feels like he has enough gas left in the tank to finish strong, that's a pretty big difference from early in the season.
It's Tim MacMahon here with you on the Fan. All right, speaking of some of these weird injuries, what's going on with Donovan Mitchell there? Was it just a false alarm? What's going on?
I tell you what, he's going to get it out through those bilateral quadriceps contusions that they found after doing an MRI on his hamstring. Did you notice where on the floor he was when, he came up and felt that tightness and had to limp off? And he was right in front of Dwayne Wade.
Huh.
Apples and trees, man.
I like that. What are you hearing from people with the Jazz? Does it feel like their chemistry is too bad for them to win? Have they given up? Do you buy any of that narrative?
I mean, they haven't given up, and I tell you what, after Game 4, they felt great. I mean, what a storybook finish to that game. Donovan Mitchell, trust Rudy Gobert with the game on the line. Mitchell to Gobert lob for the game winner. It was a cloudy, rainy day in Salt Lake City. I woke up the next morning, heading to the airport. It's bright and sunny. Mountains look beautiful. Woo, man, the Jazz are feeling good. Then they came here and got smoked. I'll be honest with you, going into the series, I kind of felt like it was a franchise that was limping to the finish of what has overall been a really good chapter in their history. And I can't say I feel totally different right now.
Why hasn't Dinwiddie been more productive this series? What's going on there?
Well, Jason Kidd was asked something along those lines today, and basically his answer was because the ball hadn't gone in the basket for him. I don't get a sense that they're real worried about Dinwiddie. When you look at, and obviously if it continues next series, it could be a problem. But they're going to go through little peaks and valleys. Maxi Kleber couldn't hit a shot for 2 months, and then next thing you know, he's the best shooting big man ever to come out of Wurzburg, Germany for a stretch of this series. So I don't think there's a whole lot of analysis to be done there other than, Dinwiddie hadn't gotten in the groove in this series.
Tim, you mentioned about players and things like that. With, the benches have been such a big part of, both teams' success. But last time out, that wasn't the case. It was about the starters for the Mavs. If you're going to, is it Maxi? Is there somebody else that we're not focusing on that could maybe be the difference maker on this closeout tomorrow night if they get it?
Yeah, I think Maxi's been a huge key in this series the whole time. They really want to be able to play that 5-out offensive style, and he's the guy who makes that work, right? Dwight Powell, they're not going to respect his shooting threat. Maxi has absolutely made them get back to respecting him. And then Bertans, if he's on the floor, he's a defensive target for the Jazz. So, I think when you look at Game 4 and you're saying, hey, what went wrong for the Mavericks in Game 4? Well, the fact that Maxi fouled out in about 22 seconds had a lot to do with it. Sure. Even Game 3 where, the Jazz made that comeback when they went small and people thinking, man, hey, did the Jazz find something with that small lineup? Yeah, they found Maxi Kleber picking up his 5th foul, and he went to the bench, and Bertans came in. Suddenly, the Jazz had a lot of success offensively. So, Maxi is the guy who's not necessarily a headliner that I think has been, has had the biggest impact in this series, and need to keep him out of foul trouble, which, by the way, is easier said than done because, you keep 7'1", 260-pound Rudy Gobert off the glass without hacking him a little bit.
Hey, Tim, okay, the playoff experience as far as with Jason Kidd, though, as a coach, and maybe things that he's picked up this time around that maybe – have you got a little bit of an understanding about things that he's done different? Is there something your trained basketball eye has seen different from him as previous playoff experiences to where he is right now?
More so than playoff experiences, I just think his approach all season long. He's – in his last couple stops in Brooklyn and Milwaukee, his 2 jobs as head coaches, there's been talk about, maybe he didn't do the best job connecting with the roster. That's been the polar opposite here. And I think he understood what maybe went wrong for him in those places, what went wrong for Rick Carlisle here toward the end, and has really done a great job going the other way. These guys buy into him. They want to play hard for him. They believe in him. And, he put together a really good staff, too. Igor Kostoskov is a guy who's won a lot of games as a head coach, not with the Phoenix Suns, but, with the Slovenian national team, with the Serbian national team, with, some teams in Europe. Sean Sweeney, I think you're seeing the jump these guys have made defensively, and he's got a lot to do with that as well.